Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would review this little video that I found very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video that I'm going to review by Mr. Boxing Ego. And I tend to review his channel here and there, especially when it comes to certain things that, well, what I'll give Ego for or credit for is this. There is certain assessments where I do believe that he is right on the money, or there are certain assessments to where I believe that he certainly does not have a bad assessment in mind. I do believe that he is one of the more intelligent boxing commentators, but unfortunately, he is a part of the quote unquote new media slash LDBC movement. And unfortunately, really all what that is mainly, pretty much a cult. It just is what it is. Primarily the Black American Fighters League cult. It just is what it is. And listen, I do get it to a degree. A lot of these channels, with the way that they think and the way that they operate, this could be a result of certain people treating black fighters unfairly or putting certain stigmas against them. But at the end of the day, whether you're ESPN or whether you're a boxing channel like mine or a boxing channel like Boxing Ego, if you are going to try and improve on the product or trying to improve overall on the boxing commentary, it is supposed to be your job to be as logical and objective at all times. And unfortunately, when it comes to Mr. Boxing Ego, just like Dante's Boxing Nation or Aki TV or some of the other channels that I tend to review, they are not logical and objective, and a lot of their racial issues and emotional issues and fanboyism do show through the fray. It just is what it is, unfortunately. And in this video, we're going to be talking about a fighter that Mr. Boxing Ego has been a very big fan of for a very long time, and I say that with all degrees of sarcasm, Mr. Tyson Fury. And of course, Tyson Fury is still in their shit list because Tyson Fury was able to beat their fighter, Deontay X, Deontay Wilder slash Malcolm X, the Malcolm X of the 2020s or whatever, at least in their minds when it comes down to it. And they had a very big emotional attachment to Deontay Wilder, and that is the reason why they hold such a grudge against Tyson Fury. Because Deontay Wilder, in their minds, was this generation's Martin Luther King or overall Malcolm X. And if you liked what Deontay Wilder stood for, that's your business. I'm not overall here trying to, tell you anything about that. But in my view, this is just my view, when you're giving a fight prediction or you're giving an analyzation on an athlete, you're not supposed to overall mainly analyze what they stand for. Because I really don't give a damn about that. It just is what it is. At least that's the way that I operate. If I'm, judging you as a fighter, or if I'm judging you as a quarterback within the NFL, or if I'm judging you as an NBA player, a tennis player, it's cool if you stand for things all in all that I think are for a great cause, but at the end of the day, I really don't care about that, at least in terms of judging greatness. But the reason why they hate Tyson Fury so badly is because Tyson Fury basically broke Deontay Wilder's cherry, and overall he made sure that Deontay Wilder was not going to be remembered as the best heavyweight of this generation. And not only did he make sure that Deontay Wilder was never going to be remembered as the best heavyweight of this generation, at least more than likely, he also put himself within the conversation as not only probably the greatest heavyweight of this era, but probably now is one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. So now, of course, the WBC, from what I know, they overall have given Tyson Fury a little bit more of an opportunity to decide whether he wants to come back. And of course, from what we see, it does seem like he does want to come back. That is pretty much what I predicted, because Tyson Fury, as we know, kind of like a little bit like Conor McGregor or some of the other fighters out there that are a little bit on and off. They always say that they want to retire, but we all know that they play a little bit of mental games, and all in all, you never truly know with them because they're a little bit of interesting characters. But anyways, Mr. Boxing Ego, he's going to talk about Mr. Tyson Fury, and you're going to see a lot of the contempt that he has for Mr. Tyson Fury still to this day. But anyways, let's get into it.
As predicted, the WBC grants Tyson Fury an extension to keep prolonging his retirement, unretirement, and decide what he wants to do. Shocking, I know. What up, Fight World? It's your boy.
The way that Boxing Ego talks about Mr. Tyson Fury, he acted like he was about to puke. He hates this man. He hates this man with such a burning passion, as pretty much does the rest of the LDBC, or at least new media. They hate Tyson Fury's guts. They absolutely hate this man.
Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Mauricio Suleiman, verified page, says the WBC acknowledging the tragedy which happened in the Fury family and in respect of their grief has decided to extend 1 week until Friday, September 1st, the official decision of Tyson Fury regarding his status as a heavyweight. So I'm not going to keep this video too long, but basically, Tyson Fury has played a million games. No one really seems to care except for the WBC. He's proclaimed that he's retired, and
Why would people really care? I mean, in my opinion, it never really was that big of a deal. Tyson Fury, once again, he's done this repeatedly. It just is what it is. Now, you can state that this is a little bit different from when Floyd Mayweather Jr. maybe would retire on and off again when it came down to it. He would retire for a few years, then he would come back. But at the end of the day, we all know that Tyson Fury, that he is a character. He reminds me a little bit of Conor McGregor, at least to a degree. He doesn't really, go as bad into it as what Conor McGregor does with a lot of his talk and a lot of his brashness, and sometimes downright assholishness when it comes down to it. But all in all, Tyson Fury, we do know that he is a very interesting character. And I knew more than likely that he was going to come back. Dante and a lot of these other guys said, why is he still on the top 10 pound for pound list? Because we all knew that more than likely Fury was going to come back. But these guys want Fury off that pound for pound list. They want him out of boxing so damn bad. They want his career to be over when it comes down to it, just so they can get this man out of there.
then he said he's unretired and he's going to fight Francis Ngannou. He's going to fight the Game of Thrones Thor dude, the strongman. He's going to fight Derek Chisora in a trilogy that no one wants or asked for. Then he says he's going to unretire to fight Usyk. Then he's claiming that he's giving Usyk 7 days, like the ring, 7 days. Like he's going to give him 7 days to, get it together, and he wants $500 million, all this ridiculousness. And then in lieu of all of this, in spite of all this, the WBC continues to favor Tyson Fury and allow him to gallivant around boxing and play these games like in no other.
And who is he hurting, Mr. Ego, other than nothing but your fragile Black American Fighter League feelings? Who else is he really hurting? I haven't heard anyone else really complain about Tyson Fury all that much, except these dudes that were so butthurt. Let's be real, we all know who I'm talking about. The LDBC and new media fanboys that are still so butthurt because their guy, Deontay X, ended up getting his ass whooped against Tyson Fury in basically 3 out of 3 matches. All right? They hate Tyson Fury's guts. Just is what it is. And they will never admit that Tyson Fury, in their eyes, is a great fighter. So they have already begun overall trying to tear down his career. And they will continue to try to tear down his career. And that's why I've done certain videos on this. Because those are the narratives that they're going to be spreading about Tyson Fury. Because they do not like him. And that is one of the things that I do on my channel, is that I will address certain narratives. No matter the fighter, no matter the athlete. If I think all in all that something is out of proportion, whether I think that athlete is being wronged, or whether I think all in all that there's a certain narrative afoot, then being underrated or overrated, I will commentate on it.
Business or business setting, would you really see this where somebody can just play games and say, oh, I'm like just imagine somebody working at a regular retail job, right? And they say, oh, I'm quitting. I'm putting my 2 weeks in. Just kidding. Oh, I'm putting my 2 weeks in. I'm going to quit. Just kidding. I really want to stay here. You know what I mean? No one would accept that. No company would accept that. But
right, but boxing is not only a different company, it's not only a different type of sport, but Tyson Fury is one of the best fighters in the world. He also is a multi-million-dollar asset. So it is what it is. So at the end of the day, there goes the term, there is exceptions for exceptional people. Antonio Brown, for those of you, of course, that know about the NFL, and for those of you, of course, that know about Mr. Antonio Brown, who, I've even heard some say in their eyes would be the best receiver that they've ever seen. During my generation, it was either Antonio Brown or Julio Jones that were mainly during that conversation, or, a part of that conversation as the best receiver for the time. But Antonio Brown, of course, later on was exposed for having a little bit of mental issues, or being a little bit of an ecstatic character when it comes down to it, or erratic, whatever the word is, that I can't find, within my mind right now. But, there's certain teams or whatever that were willing to put him on the team because they knew that he was an exceptional talent and they knew overall that he was an exceptional wide receiver. So at the end of the day, there are exceptions for exceptional people. And Tyson Fury certainly is an exceptional person. He is an exceptional talent. He not only is one of the best and greatest fighters of this generation, but he personally is one of the best and greatest fighters that I've seen of all time. It just is what it is. Not everyone can agree with that, but he is.
Apparently, the WBC has no problem accepting that. And they're letting Tyson Fury stall out the division just like they allow other fighters that they favor, like Canelo Alvarez, to
Stall out the division. What are you talking about, man? This dude's acting like Tyson Fury hasn't fought in a year. In his last two fights, he fought Dillian White, which apparently new media and the LDBC wanted in the fight. There was even certain people like Dante's Boxing Nation that were claiming that Tyson Fury was allegedly ducking him because overall there was rumors that Dillian White, coming from Dillian White himself, so I never really truly believed that allegedly Dillian White knocked him out. And Dante, of course, ate that shit up just because he wanted to believe that Fury overall was ducking him. Anything to run Fury's name through the mud. And that's why you cannot trust those sources, just like you cannot completely trust ESPN either, or any one of the main sports medias, because they have their narratives as well. Who is Tyson Fury really holding up? I mean, who? Alexander Usyk, maybe? Maybe that's the only person that you can claim that he is holding up. Like, come on. This dude's acting like Tyson Fury's been out for months and months and months and months. Tyson Fury, he fought earlier on this year. He does plan more than likely to have a fight later on this year. And if he doesn't have a fight later on this year, he's going to be fighting next year. So come on. Once again, this is how you know that he just wants Tyson Fury the fuck out of there. Because he can't stand this dude. He absolutely cannot stand this dude. And that's how you know the difference between a hater and someone who actually has some decent criticism. Ego absolutely hates Tyson Fury's guts.
to do what he wants, become franchise champion, not have any fight at 168 against a credible 168 pounder, despite being undisputed, move up to 75.
You're talking about Canelo Alvarez not having a fight against a credible 168 pounder, but you yourself allegedly said that you thought the Caleb Plant fight was a very, very good fight. Once again, keep in mind, channels like Champside, Ego, and Dante's Boxing Nation, or, well, I can't really commentate for Ego, but a certain amount of these channels, they actually once upon a time said that Caleb Plant was a very, very decent fighter. They even once upon a time would say that Canelo Alvarez was avoiding that of a Caleb Plant a couple of years ago, but then all of a sudden Canelo Alvarez picked him next, and oh, well, he must see something easy within him. So once again, that goes to show you, that's how you can tell the difference between someone who is just a critique and someone who is a hater, because they never give the man credit. When you take a look at Shannon Sharp versus Tom Brady, and when he commentates on Tom Brady, when it comes down to it, that's how you know overall that someone truly is a hater. Okay, that's how you know that someone is a hater, because the man will literally never give him credit. You know, when you see Skip Bayless talk about LeBron James, usually when he's talking on him, you can tell that that is a hater. Okay? But it just is what it is.
Just to get his butt kicked by Dimitri Bivol, allowing Tyson Fury to play all these games and, tease and taunt.
How can you allegedly not fight against a credible 168 pounder, but you have all the belts, all the official belts in the division? Like, come on.
Retirement.
And I understand that he didn't fight David Benavidez, but at the end of the day, Canelo fought all the champions, and all those champions, all those fighters were at least on the A grade level. Whether you want to rank them A plus to A minus, I would say that they were probably around the A minus mark. But at the end of the day, those are three decent wins on Canelo Alvarez's resume. But we all know that Canelo was not a favorite here in Boxing Ego land.
Then change it. I mean, I don't even understand how you could be a Fury fan for real, unless you just purposely don't care about anything.
That's right. Boxing Ego does not understand how you could be a Tyson Fury fan. The people that Boxing Ego overall prefers to be a fan of are people overall who have a tighter physique so he can get aroused. I've always said this about Mr. Boxing Ego. There's something fishy about this dude, man. There's something fishy about this dude. The way that he talks about Deontay Wilder and other fighters that he tends to like, there's something going on.
Being realistic, and you're okay with the lies and the contradictions and stuff. I mean, we have Tyson Fury in the first Wilder fight. He says he doesn't care about money, and then he's donating his whole purse to charity, which I don't believe happened.
Well, once again, we already know that Tyson Fury is a character. Who really gives a damn? Once again, you're not supposed to be a major fanboy of really any athlete out there, especially if you're going to be a logical and objective commentator. Because if you are supposed to be a logical and objective commentator, you can't be a fan, or at least a mega fan when it comes down to it. In my opinion, you shouldn't be a fan at all, but you at least cannot be a mega fan like Mr. Ego is here, because that is always going to ruin your logic and objectivity. Even if 90% of the time you speak reasonably logical and objective, when it comes to that conversation, you're never going to speak about it logically because you have an emotional attachment to that. Right? And that's the difference between me and a certain amount of other people when it comes to this commentary. I am not emotionally attached. Every piece of information that I put out there about a certain amount of these fighters or athletes, it is going to be off of some logical and objective information.
I ain't see no receipts that he donated his whole purse to charity. But then recently,
Well, Mr. Eagle, why you pocket watching? Apparently, overall, when it comes to Javante Tank Davis or black fighters that you tend to like, apparently it's pocket watching. But when it comes to fighters, boy, that this guy don't like Canelo Alvarez or Tyson Fury, oh, he digs right in them pockets. He's right there in them pockets. Anyway,
he did a quote about Usyk, potentially fighting Usyk, and he says the only reason he would come out of retirement to fight Usyk is all about the money. And I'm not going to read the quote verbatim, but he basically said it's all about money, 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 money. Show me the money. I want 500 million. I want half a billy to fight Usyk. Give me my money, or I'll stay retired forever. Just all these games, and the WBC's granting him an extension based on bereavement. But the problem lies.
yes, they're granting him an extension for a week. It's not like they're granting him an extension for a month, 3 months, a year. Once again, this dude is acting like Tyson Fury is just holding up the whole entire division that he hasn't fought in like 2 years. Like, get over it when it comes down to it. Stop getting your panties in a twist. Move on.
With this, whatever tragedy that Tyson Fury's family is going through, that's unfortunate. But at the same time,
You don't give a damn what Mr. Tyson Fury is going through. In fact, the best circumstance for you is if Tyson Fury and his whole entire family tomorrow died in a car accident. You don't give a shit about that man. So stop lying.
Tyson Fury fought his mandatory April 23rd and announced his retirement by beating Dillian White in Wembley. So that tragedy just recently happened. You've allowed Tyson Fury to cling on and hang on and, lead people astray for many, many months now. And now you're offering an extension. And the funny thing that I find with the WBC and their favoritism is how come Tyson Fury, his team, just because someone's going through bereavement, that doesn't mean your obligations stop. So how come your team can't do what the WBC initially said by the initial due date, which is Friday, and use a written form of communication just stating the basics? Like, how hard would that be for Frank Warren or Frank Warren's assistant or secretary or somebody involved in Tyson Fury's camp to say Tyson Fury fully intends to come back, he's not retiring? It's not like you're asking him to prepare his taxes and get a bunch of tax paperwork or some paperwork to purchase a house. You're asking him to say yay or nay. He's planning on continuing his career despite the lies that he said about retiring. So it's just
Despite the lies that he says about retiring. And listen, I understand where Mr. Ego was coming from. And listen, do I believe that the WBC, just like other certain sanctioning bodies, do I believe that maybe they have certain favoritism? You certainly can debate that. I am not, a real big supporter of the franchise championship. I never thought that that was a good idea. I already think that there's way too many belts in the boxing organization as it is. I don't necessarily mind there being 4 or 5 official belts, but in terms of the interim and intercontinental and all that other bullshit, no, I don't think that those belts should be around unless they are absolutely 100% going to get you a mandatory for one of the champions in your next fight. But that almost never happens.
ridiculous. And ultimately, no one
Or I
cares.
shouldn't say almost never happens, but there's a certain amount of the time where it does not happen.
He's claiming he wants half a billy to return. Who's going to pay him that? Because they're not going to, like, if you put it in Saudi Arabia, they're not going to get ROI, so they would just be burning money to give Tyson Fury that type of money for an event and a fight that stylistically is not even that good. Tyson Fury versus Usyk. Real talk, If it weren't
That stylistically is not that good. I don't know why it wouldn't be that good, because if you're a person that appreciates boxing, you know that those guys are pretty much number one and number two for the heavyweight division. Because I bet you money that if it was Deontay Wilder versus Alexander Usyk, you would say, "Oh, let's pay money for this." Keep in mind, this is the same guy that wants you to buy Deontay Wilder versus Robert Helenius next. So once again, this dude overall, he just don't like Fury, and I understand. He beat overall your Deontay Wilder ex hero when it comes down to, listen, I get it, but that's why you're not supposed to have an emotional stake, or at least a huge emotional stake in these sporting events, because it will ruin your logic and objectivity.
for like undisputed and we weren't talking about belts and like, oh, this needs to happen for solely that reason, I would rather see Andy Ruiz, Luis Ortiz Jr. winner versus Usyk, or Deontay Wilder and Robert Helenius winner, which I believe is going to be Wilder. So basically Wilder versus Usyk rather than Tyson Fury.
You'd rather see Wilder versus Usyk rather than Tyson Fury versus Usyk. What a shock. Because could that be maybe because you don't want to see Tyson Fury completely undisputed in this generation? Very interesting. I wonder, all in all, if Deontay Wilder, or I wonder if Tyson Fury was a black man. I wonder, from America especially. I wonder if he would have the same opinion. Probably not. We all know the answer.
Tyson Fury, his biggest fights have been with a black American fighter, Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder from
Yes, and a Caucasian from the Ukraine. So Tyson Fury has had his star power for a very decently long time.
Tuscaloosa, Alabama. That's the fact. His other fights, he needs a style that'll mesh.
Yes, and guess what? Deontay Wilder, his biggest fights were with who? Mr. Tyson Fury. All right, so let's just not sit here and act like Deontay Wilder just made this man's career. Tyson Fury was more well known around the world before overall he got in the fight with Deontay Wilder than what Deontay Wilder was. The first pay per view, actually, it wasn't even a pay per view fight. The first overall mainstream fight that Deontay Wilder had really a decent amount of watchers was Luis Ortiz. Because this dude was literally fighting bums of the month, for such a long amount of time. And then his first pay per view overall was with Tyson Fury. So let's just not pretend here like Deontay Wilder just made his career.
Well with his, somebody who's gonna fight a certain fight has a certain type of power, experience. Other than that, his fights haven't been these big colossal events worthy of 500. Five.
Well, I would agree with that, but I don't think Tyson Fury seriously expects 500 mil. We all know that Tyson Fury is a character. He's probably going to try to get as much money as possible. But let's be real, Mr. Ego. Tyson Fury asking for $500 million. That's not really the issue that you have with him. You have a problem with Tyson Fury because, first of all, he's looked at as the best heavyweight of this generation and also as the best heavyweight in the world. He's a Caucasian man, which is another target on your back when it came down to it. You can no longer use him as an asset anymore because he ended up beating your main asset in Deontay Wilder. And secondly, he beat Mr. Deontay Wilder. So that's why you're so pissed off.
100 M's. But that's my opinion. And the last thing I'll say about the WBC is how come the WBC is offering an extension? At the very, like I just said, Tyson Fury's team can't send a letter saying he's not retiring. How long would that really take, despite bereavement or not?
Well, like I said, Mr. Ego, there is exceptions for exceptional people. And the WBC, they probably would want Tyson Fury as their champion. So they're more than likely going to try and coerce him. Not only does Tyson Fury have the complexion for overall a certain amount of fans out there, he is one of the more elite Caucasian fighters out there. So you can maybe say that that's a little bit of it. But on top of that, Tyson Fury is an exceptional fighter and an exceptional boxer. He also is a decent asset. Okay, now does he maybe make as much pay-per-views as a Canelo Alvarez? No, but he is a multi-million-dollar asset. So at the end of the day, I could easily see the WBC still wanting to hold on to him. But Ego doesn't want that because he just wants Tyson Fury to he just wants Tyson Fury overall to retire and just be forgotten. He does not care overall what Tyson Fury accomplishes. And once again, it's so interesting. Apparently, he doesn't want to see Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk. Aren't you allegedly a boxing purist? Aren't you allegedly someone that appreciates boxing overall because it's an art, because it's a skill set? He always goes on this bullshit mumbo jumbo, all this, but then apparently you don't want to see the complete unification match. So all that shit that you were always trying to allege about these racist fans not wanting to see George Kambosos versus Devin Haney because they did not want a black champion to be completely unified. And I would somewhat agree with that, at least from a certain standpoint. But you're no better. You're no better than any of these other pro-racial, overall racist, or, emotional ass fanboys. You're no better than any of them. All right? He always goes on this bullshit mumbo jumbo to tell you that he's so different when it comes down to it. Boxing Ego, all he is another racist overall black American commentator who really was wishing that Deontay Wilder would knock Tyson Fury flush out in that third fight. That's all he is. All right, he is no better than any other racial or over emotional Caucasian fan or Latino fan or whatever fan you want to talk about. Ego is in that category with the rest of them.
I mean, it's not like I'm saying Tyson Fury himself has to write the letter, but how come Tyson Fury's team is not asking and petitioning for an extension, yet Mauricio Suleiman is offering it? Just inconsistent rules, favoritism. WBC looks bad in this situation. Boom. SLC, subscribe, like, and comment. I'm out.
Well, no, I don't think the WBC really looks that bad. I understand some of your concerns, but let's be real. The majority of these concerns are because you hate this man with a burning passion.
Introducing.
But anyways, that's really about it for this video. I just thought that I would talk about that because I found it very particularly interesting. But that's really about it. And Tyson Fury, they know more than likely, unless Usyk or someone else is able to beat him, which I do not personally see, at least at the moment, they know more than likely he is going to retire undefeated. And they don't like that because they know if he retires undefeated and as the complete unified champion, they know that there's going to be a great amount of arguments for Tyson Fury debatably being the greatest heavyweight of all time. So they have to detract him now. They have to kick that in the bud now. They know that. So there's going to be a certain amount that are detracting from him. Boxing Ego is one of those guys because he hates this man with a burning passion. But anyway, that's really about it for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later, and we will see what happens with Mr. Tyson Fury.